Hello, third graders. We are going to be reading chapter 7 in the story, The Year of Miss Agnes, written by Kirkpatrick Hill. Miss Agnes used the big map to teach us geography. She pointed out the continents with a yardstick, and then she showed us how to find Alaska every time. We had to look for the old man's beard and fat nose. The beard was all islands, the Aleutian Islands. I never knew about those. Then she took out a folded up map, a map of just Alaska. It was as big as two desks. So we pushed little Pete's and Roger's desks together, and there we were. There was the Koyukuk River, our river, and the Yukon down below us, and all the villages, even Dolby, our old village that no one lived in anymore. And there was Fairbanks and Anchorage. All the little creeks were there, and the long lakes and the sloughs. Little Pete and Roger got just excited, showing us where their trap line was, and where they set the blackfish trap, and where their dad shot the bear. It was so interesting, somehow, seeing it there on paper. I never saw the big boys so excited about anything in school. I asked Miss Agnes where Juneau was, and she showed me, way down at the bottom in the part she said was called the Panhandle, because that part looked like a long handle and the rest of Alaska like the pan. I ran my finger from where we were on the Koyukuk River to Juneau and thought of Daddy making that long trip. It was a long way away to go to die. Miss Agnes said she was going to teach us every one of the countries on the big map, so we'd know everything about the world. There were places where it was hot all the time and where they had never seen snow. There were places where it was cold in the winter and hot in the summer. I could hardly wait. After Miss Agnes folded up the big Alaska map, she gave us all a paper with arithmetic on it. She'd made one for each of us, but they were all different. Charlie boys and Selena's just had numbers on them and places to draw things to see if they could count. Like, I was 10, so my paper had some hard adding and some takeaways. Marie's and little Pete's and Roger's had lots more on it than mine did. I always hated this arithmetic, and I always just wrote any old numbers down before, so I wouldn't have to think about it. And if the teachers wanted me to do it right, I would cry and carry on. Then they would leave me alone about it. Even if writing was fun when Miss Agnes showed us how, there was no way she could make this arithmetic fun. After she walked around to see how many of us could do the figuring on our papers, she told us the story of Sam Dubin. That's the old man who had the mother named Frederica. Sam Dubin came from far away, to a place above the boot, Yugoslovakia or something. And then he made a store here long ago, up around Elkaki. He made a lot of money because there were a lot of mining camps here in the old days, and those miners would buy anything. But that old Dubin couldn't read, and he couldn't do arithmetic, only a little. After a while, people began to cheat him, and he lost all his money. He had to go back from where he came from, broke. All that money he got cheated out of because he couldn't do this arithmetic. Miss Agnes was going to teach us so no one could cheat us. Like if we went to a trader in Fairbanks and sold our furs, when they added it up, we'd know if they shorted us. Or if they went to a store and gave them money, we'd know if they gave us back the wrong change or charged us too much. It could happen if you're not smart. So right there, I made up my mind I was going to get good at this number stuff. After school, little Pete ran home and got his dad, Big Pete, to come and look at the map of Alaska. I was staying after to help Miss Agnes. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want school to end, even. Big Pete was embarrassed to come into the school. I could tell. He didn't speak English too good, so he just nodded his head up and down when Miss Agnes talked to him. But he got all excited over the map, too, and started to talk in Athabascan to little Pete. One place on the map he said was wrong. Some way the creek turned, seemed like they looked at that map a long time, and then they finally left. It was really funny about Big Pete because he was the littlest man you ever saw. He was just a little bigger than me. Mama said he was always like that, just a little thing. And then he got married to Lena, and they had Little Pete, and that's when they started to call him Big Pete. But now Little Pete was way bigger than his father, way bigger than anyone else in the village. Little Pete was just a giant, and he was still growing, Grandpa said. His head just scraped the top of the school door. And Big Pete was like a wolverine, Grandpa said. He could get madder than anyone. And if he was mad at Little Pete, it would look so funny, him yelling up at Little Pete, and Little Pete just looking down at him, scared like. Little Pete was as gentle and kind as a big moose, and here he had this scrappy little father. After that, after they left, I helped Miss Agnes wipe the desks off with hot, soapy water. And then Miss Agnes washed the blackboard so it was perfect again. I couldn't do it like that. I always got it smeary. I watched her long, skinny arms up and down, up and down. She moved so fast always. Miss Agnes, I said, why did you quit teaching school at Elkakeek? Goodness, it was about time I quit. All those children must have got tired of me long ago. She looked at me to see if that was enough answer, but she could see it wasn't, so she got serious. It was time for me to go home, she said. I haven't been to England for a very long time. I didn't mean to stay in this country so long. It was only to be a few years. Then the war started, and I didn't want to go back to England when the war was on. I knew about that war. Gilbert Dendoff had gone to fight in that war, and old man Anderson was always listening to the radio and reading the newspapers and talking to the old men about it. He used to get pretty excited. I had forgotten about that war. I was really little when it ended. My mother wrote me every year to come home. I looked at her with interest. To think of Miss Agnes having a mother. What could her mother be like? Does she wear pants? I asked. Miss Agnes laughed. Goodness, no. And she'd have a fit if she'd ever seen me in them. Well, then, how come you didn't go to England after you left Elkakeek? Did Sam really kidnap you? She put one eyebrow up in a funny way, she had. I was almost on my way when he came by the hotel in Fairbanks with Dr. Ryan, the superintendent. Dr. Ryan said he had a hard time getting this school set up and he was going to lose it if I didn't take the job, just for 1 year until he could find someone else. Oh, I said again. I'm glad Sam did that. Then I thought of how long it had been since she'd been home. Was your mother sad that you're not coming? Miss Agnes gathered all the pencils on her desk together and put them in her drawer. My mother died 2 years ago, she said. Miss Agnes will only stay here a year, I told Bertha. Bertha looked sad. I knew it, she said. I hope I learn to spell real good before she goes. Then I can write her letters. All right, boys and girls, I would like you to think about why did Miss Agnes show the class a map of Alaska? Think about that. Why did Miss Agnes show the class a map of Alaska? And I also want you to think about how does Miss Agnes make learning math meaningful to the students? Think about those two questions and be ready to share.